feedstocks are coconut shells, corn cobs, and palm kernel. So the idea is that all of these things are already being grown and are already posing a waste handling problem. So that when they thin the trees in California to make sure that there aren't forest fires, all of that wood has to go somewhere. And generally speaking, it's going into composting or landfill applications, but there's not really enough of a demand for compost and it takes a really long time to break wood down that way. So with our process, we basically burn it and use the smoke to run an engine that powers the generator.
So, Ms. Sherwood's class, do you have a question yet?
Well, I have a question because in this community they were talking about doing some cogeneration of woody products, and there was a big concern about the microparticles. Is that something that nanoparticles, I think they were called? Is that something that you have concern with as well?
Well, we treat our exhaust through a catalytic converter, through a three-phase catalytic converters. So we remove 90% of all of the NOx, CO, and particulate matter. It's like we're treating our exhaust more thoroughly than a car or a diesel engine would. And the nanoparticles that you're talking about are largely found in diesel applications.
How about 5th or 8th graders? Are there any questions from Blue Heron?
Yes, Annabelle has a question.
Annabelle, can you stand in front of the camera so we can see you?
Let's see.
Ah, there you are. Thank you.
Why are you at this conference?
Hi, Annabelle.
Why?
Really loud.
Why are you at this conference?
So the reason we're at this conference, in addition to the fact that our unit is one of many options for renewable energy, we're basically the only technology out there that can call ourselves carbon negative. And the reason that we can call ourselves carbon negative is not only are we converting all of these solid hydrocarbons, which are the wood chips or the nutshells, into electricity, thus offsetting the use of fossil fuels. So there's some carbon points there. That mostly would only get us to carbon neutral, except for the fact that all of the carbon in the wood that is not converted to gas is converted to biochar. And the biochar, as I mentioned before, is a activated, stable form of carbon that can last in the soil for up to 120 years. So if you think about what would happen if we just burned an entire piece of wood, all of that would turn into CO2 and water vapor. But by burning it in a non-oxygenated environment at high temperatures, you actually stabilize the carbon. And activated carbon has a super high surface area, so when you add it to soil or to compost, it can enhance the biological activity. Nutrients adsorb onto it, so they stay in the soil longer rather than running off, so in the case of fertilization, etc. So the biggest piece of that is that carbon can be returned to the earth in a totally stable form. So instead of it all going into the atmosphere, we're actually taking carbon that would otherwise turn into CO2 and putting it back into the dirt. So the fact that we have one of the only carbon negative technologies is why we're here at this conference.
If somebody's asking a question, you'll have to speak a little louder. We're in the VIP press room area, and it's pretty loud. So, Lois, is the question coming from your classroom?
You guys have a question? What's that? You talked talked a little bit about your educational background. What do you see yourself going into? What direction do you see yourself going into in the future?
So my ideal situation in the future is working to establish systems of waste commoditization, which is a little bit of a weird term, but systems of multiple different methods for commoditizing waste streams. So whether those waste streams are wastewater or exhaust from a coal plant, and pulling those streams together to generate energy plants. So that's kind of where I've done this. I'm working on this review of all of the available technologies. Most of the technologies that I've worked with up to now have been biological in nature, but now I've moved into the chemical natured one. So I think once I maybe grab a couple more, which I've found out about a bunch of really interesting ones at this conference, finding and packaging those technologies and providing them to waste producers is kind of what I'm passionate about and what I think is most important for climate change.
Okay, Blue Heron, do you guys have a question?
Eunice has a question.
How much energy has your organization generated?
How much energy have we produced?
Yeah.
Okay, so our units are 20 kilowatt units. So we have about 800 of them distributed throughout the world. So that would be about, can anybody answer that question? I know,
800 times 20, who's going to answer it first?
you guys got it.
We have Brianna.
16 megawatts of electricity distributed. So I don't know how much, so that would be capacity, and then we measure kilowatt hour is the form of power. So I can't tell you how much power we produce, but I can tell you how much electricity we have the capacity for producing globally.
So how about, I'm going to interrupt here with a question. One of the units the pictures that we sent to the teachers, one of those units can produce in a day electricity to power something that they can relate to.
So your house uses about 4 to 5 kilowatts. And when I say that it is 4 to 5 kilowatts, that's a continuous rating. So that means every hour your house is consuming about 4 to 5 kilowatt hours. So one of these units would power about 4 to 5 houses in the U.S. If you look at the developing world where they don't have refrigeration and TVs and microwaves and all of these things that use, and air conditioning, they use a lot of power, you're looking at closer to a village level, because those houses will use sometimes less than 1 kilowatt a day or per hour.
And then at that rate, how long does it take to pay, assuming you're in a city in the U.S., how long would it take to pay for a unit?
So it depends a little bit on where you are and what your cost of energy is. But in California, where our power cost is very high, it takes about 3 years to get the return on investment with the unit.
Very interesting. We have a lot of woody waste products in our region, so it's intriguing to think about.
I'm actually hoping Sarah to talk with the paper mill too, to maybe share some technology back and forth, and maybe even get some members of Students for Sustainability to work with her and see what kinds of things they can do for the high school as well. Shout out to Harry Doyle, Susan.
Oh, she just left. I don't know where Susan went. She's still here? Mrs. Doyle? We'll pass on that message.
Okay.
We have one more question, if we may.
Absolutely.
You want to come forward and read my question? Come on, Pam. Okay, we've got a brave 8th grader here, so.
Hey. Hey.
Do you have any facilities in Washington State? Do you have any facilities in Washington State?
So we actually just sent a unit up to Walla Walla, Washington. So it's our first ever, and it's at the college there. So it's really exciting. Maybe when we come up to talk to the paper plant, we can tour it.
So are you coming up to our paper plant in Port Townsend?
Well, we're going to talk about arranging maybe a project or an opportunity for that.
That's my hope. After talking with Sarah today, it just seemed like a good fit.
Oh, and we're right down the road. And we'll have to, one of us is going to have to go up to commission the unit in Walla Walla in January anyways. So if I can combine the two trips, I would love to come visit you guys and visit your paper mill and share with you some more information about our technology and what it's like to be an engineer, because it's great.
So are you thinking in terms of when you come up of turning the products from the mill into energy?
So that is definitely an option. I would want to look at what their byproduct stream is and what their capacity is for pelletizing it, because actually the size and shape of the biomass is fairly important for developing the coal bed through which all of the reduction in the gases occurs. Without getting too deep into the science, you have to have sort of a coal bed with void space in it to facilitate part of the reaction. So pellets actually work really well as long as you are running pretty hot. So as long as they have a pelletizing process for their downstream pulp, it should be a perfect application because it's high in cellulose, high in lignin, which are all those really dense hydrocarbons that we want to convert into energy.
I'm going to need to sign out, but thank you very, very, very much for sharing a little bit of your time with us today.
Absolutely.
And, I'm hoping that we'll have some connection, get contact with you, so when my students do their climate change unit later in the year, we can make some connections. Thank you very much.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Anytime. Thank you guys. Have a good day.
Hey, thank you for coming in today. And we hope to see you. Come by and visit us if you would.
Oh, I would love to.
And we're thinking about running and doing some studies on alternative energy, so it'd be just perfect to have a visit from you and talk about.
Oh, yeah, that would be great. I have a whole presentation that I've given to many of the science classes of my siblings about algae to biofuel, anaerobic digestion, gasification, so I'd love to talk to you guys about it some more.
Very cool. Thank you for joining us. Everybody, hey, give her a wave. Shout out. Shout out to Paris. Au revoir. Au revoir.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks again, Laura. Awesome.
You're welcome. I just got lucky.